path to a clean tomorrow. So, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Think about the most grotesque dystopia you can. The grotesque dystopia. Think about something you might come to mind is Blade Runner or the future from Terminator. Well, that's the future we're quickly heading towards with the coming climate disaster because of greenhouse gas emissions. And in order to actually curb these growing emissions, we need to make a change and switch to renewables and nuclear energy. So, what's the problems that the fossil fuels cause? So, besides the obvious, their continued usage threatens to raise average global temperatures, and it's going to cause greenhouse gas. The climate. It will also cause rising sea levels, droughts, and famines, and fumes created during the burning causes many life-threatening conditions. In fact, according to an article written by Chaptal et al. And published by NASA in 2021 titled Climate Change Evidence, How Do We Know? The planet's average surface temperature has risen about 2.12 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century, a change driven largely by increased carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere and other human activities. So, the solution. I glanced at it before. We need to switch into nuclear and renewable energies. We need to start investing in these. They're both far safer and far more reliable and more efficient. And they will sit. And they're going to create cheap electricity, which will save millions of lives with their safer production methods. But let's get into why that exactly is. So, about nuclear, ignore that video. It's broken. About nuclear, it's the most productive energy production method in the world. According to the Nuclear Energy Institute, in a 2019 article titled Nuclear Provides Carbon-Free Energy 24/7, one uranium fuel pellet, which is about the size of a gummy bear, creates as much energy as 1 ton of coal, 149 gallons of oil, or 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. They also release almost no greenhouse gas emissions. Nuclear waste has the potential of being recycled for future use. And it can also cover the unreliability you would see in renewable resources. So, hold on. Just 1 second, please. There we go. So, why do we need renewables? Well, unlike fossil fuels and even nuclear, renewables will never run out. We will always have access to the wind, sun, the Earth's core, and hydropower, as well as biomass. And in addition, residential solar panels are becoming increasingly more common, which is going to decrease pressure on the grid, which is going to make electricity costs go down. And they also produce no greenhouse gas. Either most of them produce no greenhouse gases or are at the very least carbon neutral. So you might be saying, well, isn't nuclear power dangerous? No, you're wrong. In fact, it's one of the safest energy production methods. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, in their article, International Nuclear Radiological Event Scale, INES IAEA's website, the events the INES quantifies are considered in terms of the impact on the people and the environment. The scale on radiological barriers and control, and the impact on defense and depth is scaled arithmetically on a 7-point scale, which with each increasing level increasing a 10 times increase in intensity, as you can see right here. On the scale, we've had 2 that have registered a 7, and we have about 30 incidents with a rating of 2 or more. It's tiny. And in fact, according to Kutzgrad in the 2021 video titled How Many Nuclear Kill, the highest estimate places the total death toll from nuclear at 60,000, which is likely far higher than the actual amount. And again, in a 2016 scientific journal written by Sovokol BK, titled Balancing Safety with Sustainability, Assessing the Risk of Accidents in Modern Low-Carbon Energy Systems, they state, quote, hydroelectric dams are the riskiest energy system in terms of human fatalities. Across the entire sample, they represent a relatively small number of accidents, only 26, or 3.8%, but accounted for more than 97% of all deaths and more than 0.2 deaths per total watt hour when normalized to energy output from 1990 to 2013. That's massive. And aren't renewables expensive and unreliable? Yes, they have a high initial investment cost, but most of them have very little maintenance cost and upkeep cost. So once you have them up, it will eventually start to pay for itself because of how little it costs to keep running. And about the reliability, ideally, a community would not rely solely on one type of renewable. They either have a nuclear plant, or maybe a wind, maybe a geothermal, maybe biomass. If they had a solar or wind, it would cover their unreliability. And again, some renewables don't have any, unreliability, like geothermal, hydropower, and biomass. So let's take a look into the future. So imagine a utopia. Imagine like the Jetsons. Imagine a future like the Jetsons, because that's the future we could be heading towards if we switched off of fossil fuels and towards nuclear and renewables. We'll have easy breathing with less CO2 in the atmosphere. We'll be filling up our cars with hydrogen and electricity instead of gas, and climate change will largely have been halted, and electricity will be in abundance. About how greenhouse gases will have less greenhouse gases. According to CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions by Hannah Ritchie and Max Roser, published in 2020, 73.2% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from energy production, such as electricity, heat, and transport. So, if we get rid of our reliance on fossil fuels for electricity, we'll be decreasing our greenhouse gas emissions by 73.2%. So, now, take a minute, think back to the dystopia I told you to imagine in the beginning. Because this is the world we're quickly heading into if we don't do something about it. Because millions will continue to die from health complications caused by air pollution. In fact, according to an article updated in 2021 and published by the World Health Organization titled Ambient Air Pollution, states ambient air pollution accounts for an estimated 4.2 million deaths per year due to stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, and chronic respiratory diseases. Also, climate change is going to continue destroying coastal areas, causing famine and drought worldwide, and many plants and animal species will go extinct due to rising global temperatures. So, when you can clearly see the difference between these two futures, I think it's pretty obvious which one I would choose. So, let's recap. So, the usage of fossil fuels in energy production is slowly killing the planet. So we need to switch to low emission energy production methods in order to save the planet. So, in a future with my solution put into place would be a utopia full of life. And if it wasn't implemented, we'd see a dystopia. We'd see something like the future in Terminator. So what can you do? So you can write to your local representative, install solar panels on your home, spread the good word about nuclear energy. You do any of these three. I personally am going to continue strongly advocating for the implementation of nuclear power plants and the construction of new renewable power plants. So, unless we do something about the growing greenhouse gas emissions, we won't have a tomorrow to look forward to. Thank you.